Have you ever thought that counting calories and restricting food could actually make you feel better? Restricting food became my dirty secret. I just wanted to lose 5 pounds and fit into my favorite jeans, bell bottoms, those that were really popular. Anorexics are fat content savants. They're hyper aware of the fat content in food. Anorexics are actually great at making decisions when it comes to food, except their habits leads to terrible outcomes. But there is hope. I no longer restrict high-fat foods. In this episode, I cover the habit formation behind restricting food, drawing on the insights from Andrew Huberman at Stanford University, and focuses on the patterns of behavior and habit formation of anorexics. I will also go into the anorexics' perception of food. Rather than anxiety driving this behavior, they're actually very hyper aware of the food content that's going into their body. They are what's called fat content savants. Andrew Huberman labeled them such, explaining that they purposely avoid high fat food content, whether or not they're counting calories. What this means that their avoidance of high fat foods is actually subconscious. For example, they may not even pick up an avocado or nuts because subconsciously they know it's a high fat content food. So if they're in the supermarket, they'll just put it right back down. His fascinating insight inspired me to look further into my restricting food tendencies. For me, it started as a weight management strategy that quickly turned into an obsession. And for those of you who don't know, anorexia is an eating disorder that's categorized by restricting food, which often leads to lower body weight. I wanted to share these insights to better understand my journey with restricting foods, because as I mentioned in the previous episode, where my doctor told me I was malnourished, and that was because I was restricting calories but also just eating less. Now we will focus on this hyper awareness of fat in food, which is reflexive, meaning it's subconscious, we can't even recognize it, and how that turns into a dangerous habit. According to Huberman, who referenced research carried out by Joanna Steinglass at Columbia University, in the anorexic brain, the reward system becomes linked to the unhealthy habits. Let me say that again. The reward system becomes linked to the unhealthy food habit. Did you know that the anorexic brain rewards low caloric intake similar to any pleasurable activity? Think coffee or cigarettes. You know, when you have that first cup of joe in the morning, and especially when you combine it with a cigarette, it's so pleasurable. From a neurological circuit perspective, the habit of eating a low caloric food, for example, like a salad or a celery, triggers a reward in the brain. When we eat that wonderful low caloric salad, we are rewarded, and that's a chemical reaction that happens in the brain. This reward mechanism reinforces the behavior, despite it being good for our body weight or overall health. So imagine that every day you take that salad with the celery. Maybe you throw in a kiwi and an apple, which is also lower in calorie. You have this salad every single day. You feel good that you are doing something great for your body, that you're restricting the calories, and then you feel good. And that is reinforced on the scale. Except over time, your body does lose weight, but when that becomes a habit, you continuously lose weight, and that may not be good for your overall health. The brain rewards the execution of these habits that are perpetually doing bad things for your body, but for your mind, it feels great. It's very difficult to break. Whenever I ate less calories, which subconsciously was very easy to do because I would just pick up fruits and vegetables and fish, for example, lemon sole, tilapia. I would stay away from salmon and tuna, other fatty fish, and I would just reflexively pick up low caloric foods. Prior to all of this, I did at some point count those calories, but after a while, it just became very subconscious that I stay away from high caloric foods. What that looks like is that for every meal per day, and especially I would avoid the eggs, I would avoid meats, steak, and for a few months, I would not even eat protein, which is pretty dangerous. And this all kind of started because I wanted to fit into my favorite jeans that were expensive and trendy. They had studs in the back pockets, and I thought I just got to lose some weight. And besides, I always want to look good and feel good. And when I eat more salad, I do feel better. I'm just going to lose that weight and see what happens. I also thought that fatty food was pretty bad for your health. I understand that you need fats to help your brain function better. I just thought just the idea of fat in food, and then in my body, I associated fatty foods with McDonald's or pizza. The word fat just didn't appeal to me. And then the label, it says, saturated fats. So just reading that word on the label was not appealing at all. So I did manage to lose weight by eating celery and lettuce, arugula, romaine. I did that 3 times a day. In the morning, I would put the salads in the shake and I would choose like a low-fat milk, sprinkle some cinnamon because that suppressed appetite apparently. Put some turmeric, and then for lunch I would have a salad, throw a small piece of fish, maybe count 5 nuts. Again, I counted, yes, I counted a few nuts, but after a while I stopped counting the nuts and then miraculously always threw in a couple of nuts. I would never take like a big handful of nuts. I managed to lose the weight. I felt great. And I also stacked my fridge with all these healthy ingredients. Again, for the anorexic, eating low fat content food is rewarding. That's just how it works. Someone may think that it's self-deprivation, that it's punishing ourselves, and it's masochist in a way. Did I say that right? I had to look up that word. It's masochist. Someone who finds great pleasure for the pain of restricting food, for example. It's not the case. What is really interesting about anorexic is that they're hyper aware of making those decisions of what is healthy and what is not, what should go into the body and what is not. They read the labels, they really understand the composition of foods. They make great researchers. And after a while, they don't have to read the labels because they completely understand what is a good category of food and what is bad. It's so subconscious and habitual that it's almost automatic. The problem is that we live our lives like this, and people may or may not notice. If you go to the doctors focus on your weight and they focus on your blood results. In the previous episode, I talked about how the doctor was able to diagnose me as malnourished because he looked at the blood work and my weight. He saw I had a zinc deficiency, a B12 deficiency, which was an indicator of anemia. Specifically for malnourishment, he looked at 2 indicators, and I'm just going to read it off my notes here. A low hemoglobin count and a low hematocrit count. I can never pronounce that word. That kind of indicated that I was malnourished. After that, he told me, okay, just make sure to eat more food, especially protein. And there was a follow-up appointment required, but I had moved at the time and I never went back to the doctor. Rarely at these doctor's appointments do we talk about habit formation or the psychological element, and these are important. I kind of wish that psychologists and doctors would work together in an office. When you go for a checkup, you could also ask questions to the psychologist or the therapist, and they could cross-reference their findings because it would make diagnosing eating disorders a lot easier. Let's go back to habit formation and how do we intervene? Huberman had specific methods that he discussed in his research. One of them was a family-based model, and this is something I will talk about in my next episode. It's essentially where the family is made aware that this person has these habits, and they try to intervene by providing a supportive environment. That's not always the case for everyone. Imagine telling your mom, hey, I'm restricting food. Well, what is your mom going to say? Eat more, honey. This is bad for your health. Well, chemically, I'm rewarded that if I eat a salad with celery sticks, I feel so much better. Then you have to compete with feeling good, plus breaking a habit, which means rewiring your brain, plus also pleasing your mother or paying attention to what your mother's saying. And for all of us, that's completely conflicting, all this information, because we know with behavior, there's things that we should do and there's things that we actually do. And again, according to the reward system, you're going to do what feels good. So now you're sneaking behind your mother's back and eating that celery stick, and you end up doing all kinds of other things and getting very creative on how to satisfy your brain and avoiding social indicators that tell you, well, maybe, honey, this is bad for you. Well, we do it anyway. For me, it wasn't my mother, but it was my boyfriend who mentioned to me a couple of times, hey, honey, you should maybe eat a little bit more. But he didn't do enough of that. At the time, he had irritable bowel syndrome. It's a common disorder that affects the stomach and intestines, and it causes bloating and gas and indigestion, sometimes even diarrhea. He kept that suffering very private, which most men do. He would also restrict foods and he would limit his calories because he just didn't feel good every time we ate. We were in one studio apartment living together with our own disorders as individuals, and together we didn't really talk about a lot of our issues because we both were the types of personalities that said we're just going to deal with it, trying to survive. So let's recap. For the anorexics, their brain reward system makes unhealthy eating habits feel good. This is despite what happens to their body weight or their overall health. In their brain, there's this chemical reaction that happens when those unhealthy habits are reinforced. For example, eating less food that has high fat content. But there is hope. Once we begin to pay attention to our habits, in my case, I have kept a journal where I documented not just what I ate, but when I ate and how I felt afterwards. When someone tells me you should just write about it or document it, sure, we anorexic may focus on specific food items or write down recipes, but we often forget feelings we get from eating that meal. That's one thing I wish I would have done. Rather than writing down my grocery list or my recipe list and even plan out the meals for the week, I wish I would have written how I felt each time I ate a certain meal. Of course, when I made the food, I always felt good because I always catered to low fat content food. But what if my boyfriend made me food, or my friends, or I went to the restaurant or a birthday party? How did I feel afterwards? I wish I would have documented that to understand if my habit was actually a problem and causing me poor health. I no longer restrict high fat foods. I now love my dak pate and I also love salmon, but I continue to restrict other food groups. And this is due to my recent health issues, which I will cover in future episodes. What's important here is often one disorder turns into another. Whether or not you're diagnosed, the symptoms are there. It could be years that we live with this until one day we wake up and we start to listen to our bodies and, most importantly, what others around us are saying. Sometimes you may get the wrong information. Do your own research, and like me, go on YouTube to seek these experts to review the research and talk about it, like in this YouTube channel. If you found this information helpful, please subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And remember, be the girl that you want to be. My nasty, dirty little secret is no longer nasty or dirty, and it's no longer a secret. I just finished doing a yoga workout. This is my quick setup. Have a little light, drinking water, my Final Cut Pro. I'm editing in the software. So I'm glad that I was able to share that story, and hopefully it will help you. I'm going to keep going with this YouTube journey.